Hello and welcome to my very first off-the-cuff reactions to Cloak and Dagger Season 1, Episode 4, Call/Response. This was a really interesting episode. I really enjoyed sort of our turn to form after what I felt like was a little odd episode last week. I had a lot of things that I loved about this episode, some things I was a little bit more iffy on, and it's interesting sort of now that we're like 4 episodes in, really getting a feel for what this show is. As I continue to watch, I continue to love the leads. I think both actors have done a great job with these characters. I like how we're getting like just very human moments mixed in with the supernatural, and I think they're playing the slow burn very well with these characters. And I liked how we got throughout the episode Tandy and Tyrone's interactions in the church. But they were still getting their separate storylines throughout the episode, and I think they balanced those two things really well. So some of the things that I think worked well were also the things that like I have some issues with at the same time. I think that the discussion between Tyrone and Tandy was really interesting, and I think that they're really building up these characters really well. At the same time, I think that they're being a little heavy-handed at points. I feel like there's a lot of telling you all these specific intricacies of these characters as opposed to just leaving it as subtext or leaving it for them to be character traits that you sort of read into them based on their actions. Yes, I get to a certain degree that the writers get a little bit of a cheat or an out here because it's these two characters learning about each other and commiserating about how their different tragedies changed them into who they are now. And so, yeah, that gives you license to sort of talk about this stuff, and certainly also them having these visions. Last week was filled with all these metaphors and subtext and things, and now it's like, okay, well, let's make it all text. And so it's interesting because it kind of makes last week feel even in some ways less it was necessary because it got them to talk about these things, but I feel like you could have gotten them together in another way, but I'm not going to talk more about last week. It was more that I feel like there's so many interesting layers to these characters that I do enjoy hearing about, but I don't know that I needed them to be as spoon-fed to me. And that being said, I think that it culminated in a great interaction where the sort of angry debate, antagonistic argument over like who's more privileged, and sort of the show really highlighting both the issues of African Americans, especially in the South in America, and also what it's like to be poor, what it's like to be a woman, and how they both have, somewhat solid ground in their arguments, but ultimately it sort of just fractures them. And I think that was really well handled. On the flip side, that is a lot of that stems from the discussion of Tandy feeling like she wants to die, feeling like she, doesn't deserve, that she wishes that she was the one who died, not her dad, and that, she's just very self-destructive because of that. And that's interesting, but I feel like they rushed really quickly into that idea of her being suicidal and then literally attempting suicide, like, minutes later or something. It felt like that could have been a really heavy, like, powerful moment that was instead, I just felt like uncomfortable by it because I was like, you're rushing into something that you could have handled way better. And I believe the show could handle way better because they have been handling heavy topics well. That's not something that you jump from 0 to 60 in and then she immediately solves her suicide attempt with her magic powers. It just, to me, that was not one of the stronger points of the episode. And especially that it happened, even like what got her to the suicide. I mean, you can argue that it's all the things we've seen throughout the show, everything building on top of each other. But at the same time, like, she didn't jump to that conclusion after her assault. Whereas Greg's death, while a big moment, doesn't seem as like it would hit her in the same way from where I'm standing. I will say I do think that Greg's whole plotline here, culminating in his assassination or murder, I do think was one of the best parts of the episode. I think that they really played to their expectations with Greg, having him, showing that he actually isn't the person that Tandy thought he was. And then it's like, oh, he's a good guy, but the mom's gonna screw it up. And when we were in that point in the episode, I was like, this is interesting. I like that they're playing with my expectations. At the same time, I don't want Tandy's life to get too much better too quickly. I was like, he seems like too nice of a dude, and her mom seems too normal this episode, and it was kind of like hard to reconcile with what we had seen before. But ultimately, ending it with him being murdered not only was a huge like what the fuck moment, it was a great twist. It was a really sad moment. They made me care about that character really quickly, and then made me feel upset that he died, and especially made me feel bad for the mom. So I thought, oh, that was great. But on top of that, it injects the like, oh, this is the ongoing storyline. We're getting more of the villain here. We're building up to something bigger. There is a conspiracy. So that's all definitely really exciting. I thought that was a great twist. And that was like the point in the episode where I was like, yes, this is like next level. So I really liked that. Meanwhile, I actually think for a lot of this episode, for the first time, Tyrone was the more interesting of the two for me. I think that the stuff with his dad was really well handled. I think the actor playing his dad did a great job. And sort of you're seeing more different shades of how they worry about him because of what happened to his brother, and they don't want him to go down the same route as they see it. And then using the culture of New Orleans and all this stuff, I think with Mardi Gras and the beads, like, I don't know enough about this cultural stuff. It seemed really interesting, and I like that the show's like actually going into that. It's like they're not just in New Orleans to be in New Orleans, and that's very rare for a show to like really get into the culture of their location. And using that to bring in the cloak, I thought was brilliant, and tying it with his brother, all that stuff. Really well handled. All the actors and all it feels like a fleshed out real place, and I really do enjoy that about the show. So ultimately, I think this episode is quite strong. I just think there were a few things that were a little bit too fast, a little too pushy, but I am excited to see more of where these characters go. And the ultimate thing that I love is all the symbolism in the show, and how, he sees hope in people. He sees fear in people. His inclination is to fight and to attack and to be aggressive, but his power pulls him away from people, makes him run away. He's inclined to run and to hide from life, and her power is about fighting back. And I think that the sort of the similarities and differences and how they're opposite ends of the spectrum, but they're so alike in so many ways. They're really playing with that in really beautiful, interesting ways. I'm excited to see more of these actors, and I love their chemistry together. So definitely a strong episode in a lot of ways, and I can't wait for episode 5. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you agree with some of my criticisms? Do you think it was better than I thought? Is there anything that, theories that you have about where the show is going? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to have a little discussion with you guys, and I'm excited to do another one of these reactions next week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.